There's a label for everything these days. Back in my day, parenting was called just that, parenting. But no, we've got a whole load of different parenting styles now, trends in parenting. Maybe that was always the case, but I don't think so. I think it's down to parenting experts who like to label everything. Now, here are 4 parenting style labels that you may have seen on other parenting videos. You have the authoritative parenting style, the authoritarian parenting style, permissive parenting, and gentle parenting. Now, gentle parenting is quite trendy these days amongst millennials who are raising their children. It's come under significant criticism over the last few months, years, and I thought I just want to talk about gentle parenting, what it is, whether it's right for you and for your child.
If this is the only way, so be it.
So I'm going to really just give my opinions, but obviously I'd love you to share some of your opinions about gentle parenting in the comments below. So do listen to the video all the way through, and if you have a thought about what I'm saying, you think, yeah, that's totally right, or no, I do not agree with that, then please do get involved in the discussion in the comments below. Hello, my name is Tamsin and I run the website theonlychildclub.net, and I'm dedicated to supporting you and your beautiful one-child family, helping you all to grow, flourish and live life to the full. So, when you see other parenting videos, you may notice that they like to put charts up, and they may show a similar chart to this. It's the 4 different parenting styles. It's kind of more like a scale. That's why I put it as a scale. You have the authoritarian parenting style, authoritative, gentle parenting, and permissive parenting on that scale. Now, the authoritarian is when the parents are very, very strict. They've got probably quite a lot of rules, and they don't explain why the rules are what they are. They don't explain anything. Those are the rules, that's it, and you have to follow them through. Now, with authoritarian parenting, they've got very high expectations, but they kind of got low support. You just have to follow what they say. Okay, it can be very controlling, and it can cause long-term anxiety in a child as they're trying to meet their parents' approval. So it does have its issues. Obviously, some kids, they grow up and then they want nothing to do with their parents because their parents have been too authoritarian with them when they were growing up. So then we can go down to authoritative. That's a very good form of parenting. It's when you've got some very clear boundaries, but you explain what the boundaries are and why they are in place. And if your child breaks a boundary, then you do a consequence for them. You do it straight away, no negotiating, no giving lots of chances. You do it straight away, and so your child knows that you are very much the head of the house, you're in charge, but you do it in a very loving, supportive way. Now, I would say the best way that I have seen authoritative parenting being demonstrated is in the TV show Super Nanny with Jo Frost. She's very good. When you watch those videos, there's some old ones on YouTube. I highly recommend you go have a look. The kids are running wild. Most of the time, the kids are the ones who seem to be in charge of the household and just doing whatever they please, and the parents don't even know what to do to train them and to put them on a straight path, as it were. And Jo Frost comes in, she sees the issues, she lays down the law very, very clearly to the children, explains what the consequence will be when the child has broken one of the rules, and carries it out there and then, and shows the parents how to deal with it. So if you want a really good example of authoritative parenting, I do highly recommend you watch those videos. Then you go into gentle parenting. Gentle parenting is a bit more child-led. It's getting down onto their level to talk to them, almost like talking to them. You're being very, very respectful of your child and your child's feelings. So you might be saying, I really notice you felt angry about that, but you really shouldn't have bitten that other child. But there's very little consequences. There can be consequences. It's just not as well defined as perhaps the authoritative parenting. It's the other aspect of gentle parenting is you can give your child a lot more choice in all sorts of areas. So that's what gentle parenting is. It's very much about focusing on your child's feelings and trying to help them develop empathy for others, but using words rather than, consequences, physical consequences. And then you get into permissive parenting, and that's just terrible. I'm just going to say it's terrible. That is like lazy parenting. That is you got very low expectations of your child, and you use high support, but not in a good way. So your child wants to have some cookies, you give them the cookies, even if it's just before dinner. Your child wants to go out to a concert, you let them go out to this concert without that much, safety precautions on that. So you don't do many consequences, if at all. You don't ground your child if they've misbehaved. The problem with permissive parenting is that kids who have been raised in these, I would say neglectful homes, to be honest with you, if they have been raised with low expectations and they can do whatever they want, they haven't got the safety net of clear boundaries in their home, there's a few dangers that they're likely to face in the future. Number one is that they could easily be misled by other people, and if they're desperately seeking some sort of authority and they're not getting it at home, then they could be looking at in the wrong areas, and people will prey upon that. They could get themselves in trouble with the law. They are not likely to do well in academia because, if your child, if a child who's being raised in a permissive household doesn't want to do their homework, then they won't do it. I don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it. And the parents just let them not do it. So then they're not going to do well at school. And lastly, unfortunately, those people who are raised in permissive backgrounds are more likely to get involved in criminal activity, perhaps end up being arrested, going to jail, because they've just been told as they're growing up, they can do whatever they want. Then they go out in the big wide world and they learn, no, I can't do whatever I want. Now what do I do? So permissive parenting, probably even more damaging than authoritarian parenting. And in some instances, I actually think that authoritarian parenting can be quite good. And I'm going to give you an example a bit later on. Now, when it comes to parenting and parenting styles, what you might find in the different videos you might watch, if you are watching other videos about gentle parenting or parenting styles, is especially with gentle parenting, the focus seems to be about yourself and how am I supposed to speak to my child, how am I supposed to adjust, whatever. You're not really thinking about your child, and they're not really and meeting the needs of the child. And when it comes to parenting, these different parenting styles, you kind of need to adjust them to whatever the needs are of your child at that point. It has to be age appropriate, and it has to consider their personality as well. So, for example, a baby who can crawl may climb up the stairs on their own, crawl up the stairs. It's dangerous. They could fall down the stairs. You can't say to a baby, please do not climb up the stairs, as you may fall down the stairs. They ain't going to understand. So what do? You put a barrier there, okay? A stair gate. That's, in a way, an authoritarian method of parenting. A literal barrier, so your child will not have the freedom to go up and down the stairs because they're a baby. They're likely to hurt themselves. Another example of this is for toddlers. So, for example, I remember going out when I was a student. I was out in the street and I saw a little toddler. He must have been about 3, 4, and he legged it. He ran away from his mum and he legged it right across the side of the pavement, and he was going to go off into the road. I think he had already stepped out into the road. His mum grabbed his hand, pulled him back and gave him a short, sharp slap on his bum. And that was, I believe, the completely right thing to do at that moment, because she was speaking not to his logical, conscious brain, but to his primeval brain, and giving it a short, sharp slap meant he can understand that if he runs into the road, he's going to get a painful consequence. He's not going to understand necessarily, no darling, when you run into the road, you may get hurt and that would make mummy really sad. He's not going to care about that, but that quick immediate action saved him. He's going to remember not to run out into the road again, isn't he? Because he's going to think, I don't want to slap on the backside. Now, I do not advocate corporal punishment. I really think it's not a good thing. Most of the time, it gives across a negative signal. So, for example, if someone hits someone and then they got away with it, then maybe that other person may think that it's okay to hit someone else to get them to do what you want. So I've seen that before. I've experienced that before. So I know it's like, I used to hit my little sister because I thought that's what you do if you want them to do what you want them to do. So it's not a good thing. I don't advocate corporal punishment in any really format, except for an instant where it could actually, in the long run, save someone's life. And in that situation, I thought that was the case. Now, what do you think? What do you think of corporal punishment? Do you think that is okay to use? Or do you think no one should ever use corporal punishment for any reason whatsoever? I'd be interested to know in your comments below. Even if you completely disagree with me, let me know. I want to know. As your child begins to grow and develop, then you can maybe try out some of these other techniques, and it can be that you are giving your child more choices, which could be considered as gentle parenting. All right, so your child says, I'm hungry, I want a snack. With permissive parenting, what do you want, darling? I want lots of biscuits. You might say, if you're doing gentle parenting, that's fine, dear, would you like an apple or a banana? And so they've got 2 healthy choices there, and they can choose between the 2. Fantastic. That gives your child a sense of control and independence. So that's really good. Unless your child really struggles, they've got a personality type that struggles big time with making choices, and then they have a complete meltdown, then you might need to step up, be the leader in that particular occasion, say, here, have a banana. If you've got a very strong-willed child who knows their own thoughts, you might need to be much more authoritative. Whereas if you've got a bit more of a laid-back, groovy child, then you may be able to go down the gentle parenting aspect. I said, more like a scale, if that makes sense. So, for example, a headstrong child knows what they want and what they don't want to do, and you're going to have to be more headstrong than your headstrong child. So, for a headstrong child, you may need to be a lot more authoritative if they don't do as they are told. You need to show that you have boundaries and that they're going to have consequences if they don't meet up to your expectations. So for example, if your child refuses to clean up their room or take out the rubbish, and that's their job, then take away their PlayStation or ground them so they're not allowed to see their friends until the job is done. Okay, you need to be a lot more headstrong and authoritative than they are, because it's a shame for those people in a way if they've got a child like that, because you don't want to crush their spirit. You don't want to squeeze out all their independence and their creativity, but they also need to learn that they have to obey to a degree in the house in order and in the wider society in order to fit in, because if they don't, then they're going to get into trouble, like some of the things I said about kids who are raised by permissive parents. You don't want to be doing that, so you need to lay down the law really, really firmly, but with a lot of support, okay? And we'll talk about that in future videos, I'm sure. We're definitely going to be talking about that in regards to helping raising a child in an over-entitled world when we talk about how to unspoil your child. Now, I'm going to be honest, and I don't really think that gentle parenting suits most children. And that's really because I just don't think they're going to be able to comprehend much of what's being said to them, especially toddlers. It's really strange when you see the videos when people are demonstrating gentle parenting with toddlers, because they don't care. They only care about themselves. They're just not going to care about mummy's feelings or things like that. So I just think you need to be very, very firm with them. I don't think it's healthy when you're always checking yourself with the language that you're using, because children pick up on that, and they'll pick up on the fact that there's certain words that be considered taboo, naughty, bad, sinful, whatever. Now obviously back in the day, back in the very, very early, back in the Victorian times, they may have said to kids, "Oh, you're an evil, sinful child possessed by a demon," or something like that.
You're an evil child.
There was that correlation that children made between doing bad things and then being bad, and they linked it together. So long as you're not saying you're a wicked, evil child, so long as you're just saying, hey, that behaviour's bad, then your child is going to be robust and resilient enough to understand that. They may not understand absolutely, but it does help with the forming of their conscience, because remember, your child, when they're first born, they've got a very underdeveloped conscience, very, very underdeveloped. They're only thinking about themselves and their own survival. As they're growing up, you're the person who's helping develop their conscience and develop them to understand right from wrong, naughty from nice, as it were. So by all means use terms like the naughty step, but you have to explain, when you bit your friend, that was very naughty behaviour, so you're going to sit on the naughty step because your behaviour was naughty, and you're going to do it for this long and then we'll come off, okay? I'd say there's nothing wrong with using that term. I don't think you should censor the words that you choose to use. I really don't, because I think that's a real big problem that we've got in the world today. Too much censorship of words, and then kids think that you can't use any words, and that stifles free speech. I just don't think it should be used. So for example, I remember a few weeks ago I was in a school and doing a lesson about the French Revolution. I was talking to a student and me, and I just flippantly said that Louis the 16th was a bit of an idiot, and he's, "Miss, you can't use that word." Huh? What word? Idiot. You can't use that. You can't call someone an idiot. So he's the King of France from 300 years ago. I don't think he cares. He's dead, right? He's dead. I don't think he cares. But this is the fact that children have already been taught at a young age words that can be used and not used. You can't use idiot, dunce, whatever. Yeah, okay, be a bit mindful, but don't be walking on eggshells, okay? Because we don't want to be making oversensitive children, which I kind of think that's what we're doing at the moment, raising very oversensitive children. You know, when I was a kid, my mum used to say, you're big enough and ugly enough to do it yourself. I'm not scarred for life on that. I think it's kind of a funny phrase. I use it to my daughter sometimes. She's not that big and she's certainly not ugly. It's just a phrase. There's nothing wrong with it. But maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe you've got a different opinion. Maybe you think it is really important being careful what you say to your child. And you do have to be careful because you don't want your child using bad words everywhere. You don't want to be, you know, swearing and effing blinding in front of your child or anything like that. But you also shouldn't be tiptoeing with words. Just be free and easy, if that makes sense. Use some of the terms that your parents used, because it's fun and your children will grow up with a bit more resilience than what we see in kids these days. Because I would say, and I'm sort of going to go on to this, I went on to a bit of a tangent now, but I think one of the problems with gentle parenting is there's too much focus on feelings, and you'll see this in some of the videos. It's like, I know you're angry, I know you feel angry. You know, it's like some ghastly therapy thing, you know. It's like you just don't punch someone in the face when they say, I can see that you're feeling angry. It's like a patronising move. You no. Nobody wants to hear that. A child probably doesn't want to hear that. I know, I acknowledge your feelings. Who cares? All right, the child did a bad thing. Got to deal with it. Your behaviour was bad, you've got to do that. Okay? You can deal with the feelings later on, perhaps. But I think there's too much overemphasis on feelings, because feelings come and go all the time, and not enough emphasis on logic and conscious and other people's feelings, to be honest with you. I don't think it's wise to make too much about feelings. It's not the British way. I mean, what happened to the stiff upper lip thing? You know, we want to raise our children to be a bit more stoic than that. And I personally think Queen Elizabeth II was a good example of a stoic person, and everyone respected her for that. The other thing I think leading on to that about gentle parenting, this is more of a rant. I don't really agree that much with gentle parenting, and it's not because I don't agree with the concept, the premise about sort of treating children with respect and, you know, helping them have a greater understanding of their thoughts and feelings and how to deal with it. It's just because of what it's become now. It's gone more down that permissive parenting route where you can accidentally spoil a child, make them feel very entitled, and that's the problem. And I think it leads on to this other thing that there's a danger with gentle parenting, is you can end up cultivating a culture of victimhood from an early age. Focusing so much on their feelings and on the child and what's going on with the child, rather than the impact of their behaviour on other people, then the child might think, oh, this kid called me names, so I punched him in the face, but my feelings were hurt because they called me names. And so then the child who did the punching feels like the victim, even though the punching was also impactful. If you think about it, you think about Anne of Green Gables. Like, I love Anne of Green Gables, it's my favourite book of all time. Mrs. Lynde, when she first sees Anne, insults her big time, and Anne has a whopper of a tantrum strop and has a right go at Mrs. Lynde. I hate you! And Marilla does the right thing and says, look, she was a guest, she was a friend, yes, what she said was wrong, but you can't behave like that, she's your elder. And so Anne's punishment was to apologise to Mrs. Lynde. That's the right thing to do, rather than, and even after Anne did that, after Anne had a go at Mrs. Lynde, she ran off, and Marilla did have a pop at Mrs. Lynde herself for saying, you know, you shouldn't have had a go at her looks. But Anne didn't hear that, and Marilla also gave Anne a consequence. Does that make sense? So, you know, we just got to be very careful with how we handle, you know, not only do children have to be careful how they handle their feelings, but we have to be careful how we handle them. They still needs to be a consequence of their actions. But I kind of feel that with gentle parenting, goes into permissive parenting, there's not enough consequence for poor behaviour, even if the poor behaviour has been stimulated due to the child being hurt. On that, I would say, generally, when it comes to parenting, based on my own experiences, there's only two questions you need to ask, really, when there's an issue with your child, when there's been an incident, is asking how do you feel about it and what you're going to do about it. So you allow your child to acknowledge how they feel and to talk about that. But also, what action is a good action to take? And in fairness, that's where gentle parenting can be quite good, where a child can be self-reflective. When they get a bit older, then that's good. Years ago, I used to work for a charity called the Young Christian Workers, and in that, young people would gather in groups and they'd talk about their own experiences, and they would do what's called the See, Judge, Act method. So they would look at an experience they had, or one person in the group had. They would do a deep dive into that and do some research into a particular topic, perhaps, as a result of that. Then they would judge that situation based, it was a Christian organisation, so based on Bible teaching, and then they would do an action. So, for example, if a child in the group had said, I saw somebody throwing litter in the bushes from their car, then perhaps, they would discuss about the problem with littering in the countryside, and then perhaps they would do a judge section and they'd look at the Bible about stewardship, that sort of thing, and then they would do an action. So maybe as a group on a Saturday they all went out litter picking. Brilliant. That's a really good way of raising your children or raising your child to be independent and responsible for their actions. That's where I think gentle parenting can work, but also if the focus is too much on the child and is too young to understand, that's why I think it can get problematic. If you want to apply gentle parenting, wait till they're a bit older, wait till their conscious mind kind of understands what's going on, and then maybe try something like the See, Judge, Act method if your child has done something or experienced something, and to show them how to behave responsibly in the future. I hope that makes sense. Now I'm just going to finish off by sharing with you, there's only one kind of child personality where I actually think that gentle parenting can work on. I think all the other kind of personalities out there, it's going to be difficult. And that's a highly intellectual child who is also very obedient. A lot of children, you're trying to explain and communicate with them about behaviour, but they may not understand what you're trying to communicate because their consciousness, their brains aren't fully developed. So, oh yeah, I see your point, they're not going to respond with an adult response. As an adult, we all make mistakes. We're adults too. We all hurt people's feelings, but as adults we can say, hey, you really hurt my feelings on that. I am really sorry, I did not mean to do that. This is the point I was trying to get across. Something like that. Or you can just say tough titties and walk away, whatever. But for children, they don't understand that yet, so they're going to be having to learn and develop and learn how to control and regulate their own emotions. And that's your job as a parent to do so. So gentle parenting might not help from that. The authoritative parenting is probably better. But if you've got a very intellectual child who may be able to understand what you're trying to do, they still might not be that obedient and doing it if they're still questioning stuff. So I'm thinking of the character of Sheldon from Young Sheldon. He's very intellectual. He's more intellectual than his parents, but his parents may set boundaries, but because he sort of thinks outside the box, he still doesn't understand what the boundaries are about. So if you're very, very intellectual, but you're not very obedient, then even if it doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to carry it out. The only person I can think of in history that I can think of at the top of my brain where gentle parenting probably worked really well is Jesus, is Jesus Christ. And I'm thinking of the story of when he, they say got lost in the temple. He knew where he was. He gets up early in the morning, go to the temple, right? There was some sort of miscommunication thing going on. The chapter in Luke's Gospel doesn't explain that much, so I'm always having to speculate. But some sort of miscommunication. He goes there, he's there 3 days, doesn't think it's an issue, right? He's very intelligent, he's preaching on, and all these priests and scholars are very impressed by what he says. So, he's intelligent. But then when his parents finally see him and he explains, why he's there, and he was genuinely confused, it looks like, as to why they didn't just go straight to the temple. That's where he'll be. But then they say, no, you're going to come home. So he does. He's obedient. So an intellectual person who's obedient, you could probably do the whole gentle parenting, say, hey, I know you feel this, but you have to behave like that. Yeah, okay. Simple as that. Yeah, or I know you're hurt, your feelings were hurt, but you really shouldn't have done that. Yeah, okay. Bish bash bosh. You don't even have to do any sort of consequence, lesson learned. That's it. But I think for vast majority of children, it takes a lot more hard work to make sure that they are being raised to be decent, functioning human beings and members of the wider community. Well, those are my thoughts about gentle parenting. I'd be interested in what your thoughts are. Do you practice it in your own home? Is it working really well? Do you think what I'm saying is a load of baloney about personality types, or do you think actually there is something in that? Please do let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can find out about the next video all about how to unspoil your child and deal with children who are being raised in an over-entitled world. Thanks ever so much. Toodles!